to the phone and she said, "Are you sitting down?" And I, ever the smart ass, said, "Yeah, are you?" And she said, um, "Gabe is being life flighted to a hospital in Indianapolis. I don't know what happened. Your father's been arrested." And it's a long flight. It's like 6 hours or something like that. And so I was just pretty much weeping the whole time. And then I landed in Chicago the morning of April 6th and opened my phone to a voicemail. And it was my stepmom's mother. And she just said, "Hey, Tori, it's Susan. Go ahead and give me a call when you get this." And I still have this voicemail saved. It's been almost 5 years and I still have that saved. And I knew based on that message alone, I knew that he had passed away. So they had made the decision while I was on that flight, which I respect. It was absolutely their decision, but they made the decision to withdraw life support. And he passed away shortly after.
So that when you say you regret that flight, you regret it because you didn't get, in your mind, you didn't get there quick enough.
Yeah, I regret not leaving sooner. Whether it's true or not, I tell myself that if I had left that night that I got the call instead of the next night, I would have made it in time to see him. Because Gabriel was the victim of a crime, the coroner and the police took possession of his body almost immediately after he passed away. So I didn't get to see him. I did not get to say goodbye to him. I didn't get to tell him how sorry I was. So it's been 5 years, and that is something that I still think about a lot. And I still tell myself, you have to remind yourself, I have this saying that feelings lie, and feelings will be good one day and not so good another day. And so you have to rely on what you know to be true. And I know that I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. Sometimes I don't feel that way. So I have to remember what I know. So I was gone for 10 days, went back to Alaska, and I was a shell. I was probably barely a person. Barely functioning. Functioning is probably an overstatement. I went from that February, my EPR had closed out and I got the coveted promotion statement. So I went from being at JBER for 10 months and earning that promotion statement, one of the top 2 promotion statements available. So I was that level of performing to barely functioning. I would get up and go to work, but I was barely meeting the standards, definitely not exceeding them. I didn't know how to cope. I went to mental health, and the provider, I very much appreciate her. But at the time, I remember, I think it was my second session, and I had done probably nothing but cry after telling her what happened. And she was very honest and said, "I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to help you navigate through this." And I said, "Can I have a referral to a grief counselor, someone who specializes in this kind of thing?" And so that's what happened. She gave me a referral to a grief counselor, and that kind of helped to set me up on moving through the grief of losing my dad and my brother. But I was operating 24 hours at a time. I would come to work and I would do the work and I would go home. And at the time, I just had my one biological son and I co-parent with his dad. So Bruce had recently gone to his dad's house just before everything happened with my brother. So he would spend a few months with me and a few months with him because he wasn't school age at this time. And so we just, made it work. And so I was alone, essentially. I would go home to an empty house. And I think being alone with your thoughts when you're suffering that kind of trauma and that kind of loss can be really dangerous because you can just kind of go down a rabbit hole. And I think that's what happened with me. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to get through it. And so I just took it 24 hours at a time. And it was sad. It was hard. And one of my friends from work had invited me to this veterans group. They would meet once a week and kind of just share whatever they were struggling with that week. And so I would go to those meetings, and that group like helped to keep me moving forward. They would reassure me, they would tell me, you know, how inspired they were or how strong I was or just whatever. It was like just enough to get me through until the next week when I need to go back. I'm a big fan of quotes. Something I feel like if you have something, a quote that you can either say to yourself, or maybe you have like a sign in your room, kind of like your hero front one there. Those visual cues can remind you of like where your power might lie, or just remind you or reinvigorate you to keep moving forward. And so I'm tattooed, quite heavily tattooed. And I have one right here that says, "Live a life worth saving." And the story behind that is I had a tumultuous upbringing, and I moved around a lot, and I didn't really have like a safe place to call my own. You know, all the same things I've kind of heard my whole life. You know, I'm a screw up, or I'm not worth anything, or whatever. You know, I was kind of preparing myself for that. And when I got home, Dave was just kind of like burly guy, about 5'10", you know, pretty stocky and tough. And he was crying, I remember. And I walked up and I was kind of surprised. And he said, "You have so much potential and you're throwing it all away." And I don't know why. And I just remember something about that moment where I was thinking, someone gives a damn. Someone cares. And I told him later, when I was an adult, after I joined the military and kind of started a life of my own, I told him about that night and about how it changed my life, and about how I realized that they saved my life, because it redirected my path. And I started, you know, going back to school. I pulled my GPA up. I got 2 jobs to finish out my senior year, enlisted in the Air Force, you know, corrected the path that I was on. And I summarize it by saying, when I was 16, they saved my life. And so I decided to live a life worth saving. And so that's kind of just been my motto, that when life has taken me on some crazy paths, to just remember to live a life worth saving.
This will be the first 2-part series that Hero Front has done, but there are 2 very different dynamics of this story. So Victoria Baldwin is a mother, master resiliency trainer, writer, photographer, and active duty tech sergeant out of Travis Air Force Base, California. Now, after suffering the devastating loss of her brother to domestic violence, Sergeant Baldwin fell back on the skills that she learned in her resiliency training and rebuilt her life and that of her sisters, becoming a licensed foster parent and eventually adopting 2 of her siblings. She and her sisters have since created a nonprofit endeavor to honor their brother, while simultaneously writing and speaking about what they have learned from their loss and what they wish others knew when it comes to helping those navigate through grief. In the first episode of this 2-part series, Victoria runs us through the story of her brother tragically being killed at the hands of her father, who was dealing with a mental illness, and how it changed her and her family's life forever. And then going into part 2, Victoria tells us all about adopting her 2 younger sisters and what that meant for them rebuilding their life together as this new family. It's a very inspirational story, and Victoria is one incredible airman and kick-ass woman, and I'm very proud of her for being transparent with her journey so that others may be inspired. Let's get after it.